In our headlines on this Tuesday afternoon, June 13th, here in South Korea. The parliamentary hearing on state affairs, including Japan's planned release of Fukushima radioactive wastewater, continues today, with opposition lawmakers calling for a ban on all imports of fishery products from Japan and their ruling counterparts urging for refrain from baseless claims. Meanwhile, the diplomatic spat between Seoul and Beijing, sparked by Chinese Ambassador Sheng Haiming's claim that South Korea was aligning with the US against China, continues to make headlines as both the presidential office here and the White House find fault with the claim. And top nuclear envoys from South Korea and the US meet in Washington on Monday to reaffirm their commitment against North Korea's persistent provocations while leaving the door wide open to dialogue. We started the National Assembly on this Tuesday afternoon, that is, as the Q&A session on state affairs continue. Now, as was the case the day before, topping the agenda today is neighboring Japan's planned release of Fukushima radioactive wastewater. The opposition Democratic Party has strongly condemned Tokyo's plan and even called on the Yoon administration to ban imports of fishery products from Japan altogether. The ruling People Power Party, for its part, has been urging opposition lawmakers to refrain from baseless claims. Also, beyond the conflict over Fukushima's radioactive wastewater are disputes over labor issues and tangible efforts to address Korea's surplus rice. And in this following report, our National Assembly correspondent Ishihu covers the interaction earlier on Monday between Prime Minister Han Duck-soo and lawmakers regarding Japan's upcoming discharge of radioactive wastewater into the Pacific Ocean. To take a listen.
The number one hot topic of the day at the National Assembly's government interpellation session on Monday was Japan's plan to release wastewater from the destroyed Fukushima nuclear power plant into the ocean. Lawmakers from the main opposition Democratic Party of Korea voiced concerns over the safety of fish caught off Fukushima showing high levels of radioactivity.
Why think about Japan first when you have to worry about the safety of our citizens and the livelihoods of those in the fishing industry? I just cannot understand it.
One of those representing the government at the session was Prime Minister Han Duck-soo, who said that it's a misunderstanding or even a myth to say that the government called the highly radioactive fish from the region safe.
The South Korean government has never said that rockfish with high radioactivity levels that are being caught off Fukushima are safe. That's why South Korea is banning all fish imports from 8 prefectures in Japan.
Furthermore, he once again shared South Korea's plan to conduct an independent review to determine whether the disposal of the wastewater will be safe for South Korea.
The IAEA will conduct its tests. South Korea will also independently review its raw data and will ban imports of radioactive, contaminated fish from Japan until we consider them safe after review.
The ruling People Power Party once again asked for the exact stance of the government on the issue.
Mr. Prime Minister, what is the government's stance on the issue of Fukushima wastewater disposal?
The government's stance is the same as the previous government's, which is that the most important thing to consider in this issue is the citizens' health and safety, and that there needs to be scientific and objective verification.
Prime Minister Han then laid out the South Korean government's 3 continued requests to Japan.
First, provide and share thorough scientific evidence. Second, have discussions with the South Korean government in advance. And last, let South Korean experts participate in the IAEA's investigation process.
Meanwhile, the PPP has launched a task force called Saving Our Ocean, along with experts in the field, while the DPK has also formed a response team within the party to deal with the issue. 이시후, Arirang News.
And in related news, Japan's launch of a trial on Monday of its planned discharge of Fukushima radioactive wastewater continues to fuel much condemnation from communities within the neighboring country and beyond. Our Shin Se-byuk reports.
On Monday, Japan began a 2-week test run on the process for discharging nuclear contaminated water from the crippled Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. During the test run, the plant's operator, the Tokyo Electric Power Company, will mix fresh water and seawater and see whether a specific volume of water can flow to the sea. Ensuring safety is also on a checklist. TEPCO will also see if the shut-off system works well in the event of an emergency. Although there won't be any actual release, the start of the trial operations means a release could take place soon. In the actual dump process, the treated water, which has been decontaminated of all radioactive substances except tritium that's inseparable from water, will be mixed with seawater. Last week, Japan sent some 6,000 tons of seawater into a 1-kilometer-long underwater tunnel built in the nuclear power plant. The tunnel will be used to guide the contaminated water to a point about 1 kilometer offshore from the plant. Japan plans to have its water release system ready by the end of this month. A final report from the International Atomic Energy Agency on its inspection is expected in late June. Once everything is completed, Japan plans to begin the release of the wastewater sometime this summer. While Japan said it would not dispose of the water without consent from concerned parties, it is facing fierce opposition both at home and abroad. Last Saturday, Japan's industry minister Yasutoshi Nishimura met with representatives from local fisheries. There, they expressed grave concerns over the plan, saying the move is fueling anxiety about the future of fishing operations. Those from the neighboring countries are also worried.
If our consumers knew that nuclear radioactive water from the Fukushima power plant were dumped into the Pacific Ocean, Filipinos will be afraid to eat any marine life we have caught here in Manila Bay, because the dumped water is bad for the environment, for the fish, and of course, can harm our health.
Hong Kong is also among those concerned. On Monday, Hong Kong's Environment and Ecology Bureau said it will enhance quarantine inspections on Japanese seafood, saying any necessary preparations such as procuring additional inspection equipment have already been completed. 신세벽, Arirang News.
In Washington back on Monday, top nuclear delegates representing the Yoon and Biden administrations have reaffirmed their commitment against actions by Pyongyang that destabilize regional security, while at the same time reiterating the importance of seeking tangible measures to engage the regime. Our foreign affairs correspondent Choi Min-jung explains.
South Korea and the U.S. have warned North Korea that there is nothing it can gain through provocations. Seoul's top nuclear negotiator Kim Gun and Washington's special representative for North Korea Sung Kim met in Washington on Monday and underlined the importance of making Pyongyang understand that its provocative behavior will have consequences. The two allies agreed to strengthen efforts to cut off funds going into the North's nuclear and missile development programs. Kim Gun also highlighted that cooperation with the U.S. as well as Japan will advance as the three countries will simultaneously take seats at the UN Security Council next year. He added Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo will make the utmost efforts to make sure that the UNSC no longer remains silent on the regime's provocations. The talks follow North Korea's failed launch of its spy satellite last month. And to counter a widely anticipated second launch by the regime, Sung Kim said the U.S. will respond alongside South Korea and Japan, potentially through sanctions and military action. At the same time, both sides also reiterated their commitment to engaging Pyongyang, saying they are willing to meet the North without preconditions, instead of passively waiting for the regime to return to dialogue. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, the diplomatic spat between Seoul and Beijing, sparked by Chinese Ambassador Xing Haiming's claim that South Korea was aligning with the U.S. against China, continues to intensify as both the presidential office here and the White House weigh in on the matter. Our senior foreign affairs correspondent Pyongyang has the latest.
South Korea is a sovereign independent nation that has the right to make foreign policy decisions that it deems appropriate. That's according to White House National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby, speaking about China's ambassador to South Korea, Xing Haiming, who said last week that it would be wrong for Seoul to bet on Beijing's defeat, apparently criticizing South Korea's foreign policy leaning towards the U.S. In a press briefing on Monday U.S. local time, the senior White House official also added that it appears as if there was some sort of, quote, pressure tactic being used. An official from Seoul's presidential office had also said Monday that an ambassador's role is to act as a bridge between two countries, and that if that bridge does not conduct its role properly, it can harm the national benefits of both countries. The official also told reporters that under Article 41 of the Vienna Convention, diplomats must respect the laws of the receiving state, and that it's also their duty not to interfere in the internal affairs of that state. It's rare for South Korea's top office to openly criticize an ambassador from a particular country, meaning that the government is taking the situation seriously. In response, the Chinese Foreign Ministry simply said it's the ambassador's job to meet and communicate with a wide range of officials in order to boost its relations with South Korea. All this diplomatic controversy comes as the Chinese ambassador has said last week that South Korea was entirely to blame for the many difficulties in bilateral relations, and that Seoul will certainly regret it later.
Some are betting that the United States will win and China will lose, but clearly this is a misjudgment.
As both sides continue to exchange harsh comments, it appears that it'll take some time before the two countries find a way to repair ties. Pyongyang, Arirang News.
President Yoon Suk-yeol is scheduled to attend the General Assembly of the International Bureau of Expositions in Paris next week. Plans to this end were disclosed by the president himself during a cabinet meeting earlier on this Tuesday. He added the trip will be a chance to share Busan's vision for the 2030 World Expo, which he claimed was different. The two-day General Assembly begins on June 21st and is the fourth round of presentations by bidding countries, including Italy and Saudi Arabia. Also making note of the global race for advanced technology, including chips and batteries, President Yoon called for all-out related efforts to sharpen Korea's competitive edge. He also pointed out that reforms within the higher academic arena are essential to foster future talent in technology. On the corporate front, a sigh of relief from chip makers here as U.S. media reports claim Washington may extend existing exemptions for Korean companies from U.S. export controls, permitting them to pursue their chip-making operations in China. Our Lee Seung-jae has details.
While the United States is banning the export of semiconductor production equipment to China, it's been reported that it will extend the export control moratorium applied to South Korean companies. According to a report by the Wall Street Journal on Monday, U.S. Undersecretary of Commerce for Industry and Security Alan Estevez met with officials from the Semiconductor Industry Association last week and announced that he would extend the suspension of U.S. semiconductor equipment export controls to South Korean and Taiwanese companies for the time being. If realized, the move will come after the U.S. Department of Commerce announced last October export controls that effectively prohibited U.S. companies from exporting semiconductor equipment to Chinese semiconductor manufacturers, while applying a one-year moratorium on Samsung and SK Hynix, two South Korean chip makers, which have factories in China. The report analyzed that the extension of the moratorium shows the difficulty of isolating China's high-tech industries in a highly connected world economy. It also warned that the latest decision would weaken U.S. export controls aimed at slowing China's technological progress. Concerns have been growing among U.S. lawmakers who believe that South Korean companies like Samsung and SK Hynix will replace Micron's market share in China after Beijing banned the sales of goods from the U.S. chipmaker. And with this, the Wall Street Journal reports the U.S. government is seeking to prepare separate standards for Korean companies producing semiconductors in China. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
In the U.S., Wall Street rallied on Monday ahead of the U.S. Federal Reserve's interest rate decision pegged for Wednesday local time. The S&P 500 rose 0.93%, while the tech-heavy Nasdaq gained 1.53%, with both markets closing at their highest since April 2022. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 0.56%. The rally comes amid expectations that the Fed will hold rates steady during this week's meeting. But investors remain wary of the U.S. Consumer Price Index, which is set for release on Tuesday. Should the index outcome exceed market forecast, the chances of a rate hike are reportedly back on the cards. And staying in the U.S., the country is poised to rejoin UNESCO nearly 6 years after former President Donald Trump withdrew from the UN agency. The announcement was made by UNESCO Director General Audrey Azoulay on Monday, ahead of a related vote by member states next month. The decision comes a week after Washington submitted a letter formalizing its intent to rejoin. The Biden administration has agreed to pay more than $600 million owed to the organization after the U.S. stopped making payments in protest over Palestine's membership in 2011. The Trump administration withdrew its membership in 2018, alleging mismanagement and anti-Israel bias at UNESCO. Ukraine's armed forces are braving adverse weather conditions to fiercely take back territory from Russian occupation. Now, this is according to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Our Yoon has more on Kyiv's counter-offensive.
According to the Ukraine's deputy defense minister on Monday, the country's military forces successfully conducted counteroffensive operations over the weekend. Despite the small size of the villages that Ukraine has claimed to have recaptured from Russian occupation, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said in his nightly video address on the same day that progress is being made on the battlefield and necessary losses are being inflicted.
The battles are fierce, but our movement is underway, and that is crucial. The enemy's losses are exactly what we need, and although the weather these days is unfavourable, the rains complicate our task, nevertheless, the strength of our soldiers yields results.
Meanwhile, Russia has been using thermobaric rocket launchers to strike Ukraine, which had been stalling the counteroffensive. But according to a Washington, D.C.-based think tank, the Institute for the Study of War, Ukraine appears to have destroyed at least 2 of those TOS-1A launchers using the U.S.-supplied Paladin 155mm artillery system. Moscow has yet to officially acknowledge any Ukrainian advances, but Kyiv said on Monday it wrested away 7 villages spanning roughly 90 square kilometers since the weekend and made small gains near the eastern city of Bakhmut. The AP is reporting that Ukrainian forces are fighting house by house and meter by meter, pointing to how difficult the battle will be for Ukrainian units. Russia has superiority in terms of men, ammunition, and air power, but some Western military analysts say Ukraine is attempting an extraordinarily difficult tactical operation and that it was too early to draw conclusions. They added that results of the initial assault may be showing that Ukraine is testing Russian defenses and should not be overinterpreted. Yoon, Arirang News.
Back here in Seoul, today, June 13th, marks the 10-year anniversary of K-pop superstars BTS. In celebration, major landmarks across the capital city are being lit up in purple, the group's color. Starting yesterday, Sebitsam Island, Namsan Tower, Seoul City Hall and Dongdaemun Design Plaza are among the places in purple. Also starting this evening, Sebitsam Island and the Sejong Center will feature BTS-themed digital artwork on their outer walls every day except Mondays. Both events will continue until Sunday, June 25th.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. In the United States, Secretary of State Antony Blinken said on Monday that the Biden administration has taken steps that have hindered efforts by China to expand its global spying network. The steps included diplomatic engagement and information exchange with governments that considered hosting Chinese bases. Blinken's comments come after a report by the Wall Street Journal on Thursday last week cited U.S. officials as saying that Cuba allegedly hosted Chinese spy facilities capable of electronic eavesdropping. According to Blinken, the facilities were supposedly upgraded in 2019. But Havana has pushed back at the allegation, calling it slanderous, while Beijing has said that the spying claims are false. The updates come as Blinken is set to visit Beijing later this week in an effort to soothe strained diplomatic ties. In Germany, NATO has begun its largest ever Air Force drills. The 2 weeks of drills started on Monday and involve over 250 aircraft from 25 NATO and partner countries. More than 10,000 soldiers are also taking part in the drills, called Air Defender 23. They have been planned since 2018. The first flights took off from 3 German airfields with drills focused on cargo and refueling planes. The exercises are meant to improve interoperability and preparedness. And they are also meant to send a message that the alliance can defend itself. Officials say the drills are not targeted at anyone. Moving on to the Philippines, nearly 13,000 people have been evacuated from their homes on Luzon Island as a nearby volcano on Sunday began spewing lava and sulfuric gas. According to experts, Mount Mayon generated 21 weak volcanic earthquakes on Sunday, as well as 260 rockfalls and lava flow activity. They warned that a hazardous eruption is possible within weeks or days, and that the increased activity could cause rockfalls, landslides, and ballistic fragments. Most residents in the area started evacuating from Thursday last week, when the alert level was raised to 3 out of a possible 5. Authorities also moved 10,000 farm animals to safer areas. Mount Mayon is one of the world's most active volcanoes. It last erupted in 2018, displacing thousands of people. And finally, in Ecuador, a 76-year-old woman came back to life during her wake. Relatives of Bella Montoya Tapia were alerted when they heard a banging sound coming from her coffin. The elderly lady had officially been declared dead at a local hospital in the town of Babahoyo just hours earlier. Health authorities say she was hospitalized on Friday for a presumptive cerebrovascular accident and had a cardiorespiratory arrest. Tapia is now in intensive care and is receiving treatment. The Ecuadorian government has launched an investigation into the hospital. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Passing rain and isolated storms are in the forecast across Korea again. A chance of strong wind with hail cannot be ruled out. So more wild weather is in the forecast with 5 to 40 millimeters of rain expected this afternoon, including in Daegu, where heavy showers could fall in the mid-afternoon, dropping 20 millimeters an hour for a couple of hours, whereas the capital region has a slim chance of getting passing rain today. Until it rains, the skies will remain sunny. Along with sunshine, UV rays will boost to very high levels in central regions, and high ozone levels are expected for most parts of the country. But the air quality will be decent nationwide all day today. Afternoon highs are similar to yesterday, with a high of 29 degrees in Daejeon, Gwangju, and Gyeongju, and Daegu will be topping out at 30 degrees Celsius. Now the chances of sudden rain and hail last through Thursday, while temperatures warm up, possibly reaching up to 31 degrees Celsius by Sunday in the capital. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
And those are the headlines at this hour, but we have our panel session coming up right after this break, so do stay with us. Thank you for now.
I'm the ambassador of the Republic of Rwanda to the Republic of Korea. Since I've been in Korea, I've heard and learned a lot from Arirang TV, and I'm very thankful. Arirang TV has been a very good media diplomacy partner and I've learned a lot through the content and the programs. Korea has been shining, and I've been having this feeling and this perception thanks to the content and the work of Arirang TV. I look forward to see Arirang TV continue to take the lead in this in giving the world Korean information about the culture, the IT information, and everything surrounded it, resonating with the world. Arirang.
Contour the world, simply contour. India, the United Kingdom, New Zealand. Woo!
I'm excited. You excited?
Of course.
Yeah.
Music, start.
K-animation, loved and watched around the world. We want to make more animations to reach more children. Traveling time and space. Developing adventure and curiosity. Infinite creativity and hope. We want our children to grow up to be happy. K-animation, watched by children all around the world. So that joy can be felt when our animation is watched. This is the reason we make animation and share with the world. K-animation, befriending children all over the world.
Global K-pop group BTS celebrates 10 years of making music that matters, which has led to a remarkable number of records on global charts and the broader promotion of issues of universal interest, including discrimination against minorities. So how were the members of BTS discovered? What are the key factors behind the group's success? And what have been the broader implications of making music that matters?
Welcome to Issues and Insiders. Today, that is June 13th, we mark K-pop sensation BTS's 10th anniversary by revisiting the group's milestones in music and more. For this purpose, I have Tamar Herman joining the session virtually. Tamar, it's been a while. Welcome back.
Thanks so much for having me.
I also have Jeff Benjamin with us. Jeff, it's great to have you on.
Thank you. Great to be on.
Right, Tamar, let's begin with some details about the birth of BTS, which some say, and I'm quoting, that the members were discovered in the most unconventional ways. What more can you tell us?
Yes, BTS's origin is a little bit different than what we're used to for most K-pop groups. Originally, Big Hit, Now Hype, they had decided to make a hip-hop-oriented group. And so the first three members to join were RM, Suga, and J-Hope, who have hip-hop underground backgrounds. So RM is kind of the base of the whole group, and he was known quite well in the industry as an underground rapper. Suga was a producer and also a rapper, and J-Hope was really well known as a dancer. And so the three of them came to the company in different ways. Bang Si-hyuk scouted RM, it was a whole thing, and then Suga applied as a producer, and then as the group changed, they had other hip-hop trainees, some producers and rappers that their names are known. They decided, I guess, at one point to change direction, and so they started scouting other talent, and each member had their own story. So V, he went to accompany a friend on auditions. He didn't mean to audition. He ended up auditioning, and he was the only person who got in. Jimin was a contemporary dance student, and one of his teachers said, "Why don't you go audition?" Jin was street cast when he was a student. He was pursuing acting. He was thinking of maybe being an actor. He wasn't planning on being a K-pop star. And that happened. And Jungkook's is like one of the most famous stories in the industry. He was applying for, I believe it was Superstar K, one of the audition shows, and he sent in his tape. And it didn't make it to air, but it went around the whole industry, and he ended up getting 7 offers from different companies because people saw him as just such a talent and someone that they all wanted. And he ended up going to Big Hit because he wanted to be with RM. So the group all have a little bit non-typical stories that got them in the door at Big Hit, and that led them to BTS.
Right, right. Jeff, if I were to ask you to identify the key factors behind BTS's remarkable popularity, what would you choose to highlight and why?
Yeah, I think like any great musician in the world, you can have talent, you can be amazing on stage, you can be an incredible singer, a great songwriter. I think what ultimately makes an artist that goes beyond just, what you might expect a typical pop star to be is an artist that has a message and has a viewpoint. And I think BTS has proved from the beginning that they've always had something to say, some type of viewpoint, some type of story that they always wanted to show with their music, with their art, with their performances, whatever it might be. So even from those early days that Tamar just kind of took us back to, there was always sort of a larger story that BTS was developing. They were sharing different things about themselves, about what was important to them, issues that they wanted to talk about. And it started from even their first album that talked about, issues that people their age were going through because they were at the time school students. They were, experiencing things in the school place, whether that was bullying, whether that was, feeling hopeless almost as young people do when you're a student, the pressures that students have. There were a lot of things that I think BTS always made sure that they really wanted to speak to. And that was something in particular that was just so important about BTS, beyond being brilliant musicians, beyond being brilliant performers, and being, in my opinion, some of the best performers of their generation, but also being artists that truly did have something to say and always made sure that they rose to the occasion to be able to have something to say and have something larger to say that goes, beyond just being a flashy pop star or someone who can make a great stage show.
Right, and staying with that, Tamar, what do you believe was behind, or is behind, of course, BTS's success? You wrote a book also about BTS.
Yes, it's called BTS Blood, Sweat, and Tears. It came out in 2020, so it's a little bit outdated now. We're a few years out. BTS, their whole story is a story of perseverance. It's about individuals who come together to create something bigger than itself. The fans around the world, if you go on Twitter pretty much at any given time, there's some BTS conversation going on because they are just so connected right now. Obviously, we're in the middle of their anniversary celebration, so it's trending like nonstop, just phrases relating to the group. There's a bunch of videos coming out. There's a bunch of live events happening. But I think it's that connection that Jeff referenced, the narrative of being relatable, reflecting the voice of a generation. That's what makes somebody an icon. That's what makes, pop music has to be immensely relatable, but also very personal and feeling. And BTS do that in such a way that each of their individual stories, no matter how personal maybe a song can be, they can make it in a way that you as an individual can listen to the lyrics, or you can watch their performance. You don't even need to know the lyrics necessarily because, music is such its own language. But you can just watch them or listen to them, and you kind of have this idea of connectivity and relatability. Obviously, they're major superstars now, but at the same time, they're still just individuals. And so bringing that kind of connectivity is such an important part of who they are.
Right, of course. Jeff, BTS, it's broken numerous records of the past decade. And that being said, let's begin with the records broken on the music front.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's such a journey to go through, and there's no way I could even, possibly even name all the records they've broken. But I think something that's really important with their story is that they were first recognized for their social media impact. I will never forget BTS first coming to the Billboard Music Awards in 2017, where they ended up breaking Justin Bieber's, I believe it was a 6-year-long streak of always winning top social artists. And then and that breaking point, they were able to slowly but surely continuously get recognized for their music in particular. I mean, we could talk about, of course, their Billboard chart accomplishments, whether that was being the first South Korean group to be able to hit #1 with an album, with a single, with multiple albums, with a Korean language song in and of itself. You could just kind of keep growing, and when it comes to the charts, but also it wasn't just the American Billboard charts. It's been charts around the world. The fact that BTS was able to send their album to #1 in major music markets around the world, which includes, top countries like Japan, the UK, Germany, France, China. All these countries have been able to kind of recognize and embrace BTS as the chart toppers they truly are. And that's been shown in sort of a larger global way as well. In 2020, for example, BTS became the first non-Western and non-English speaking artist to be named the International Federation Phonograph International Global, the IFPI rather, Global Recording Artist of the Year. And that's going against all artists, all the humongous pop stars we know from America, Japan, Korea, wherever it may be. And BTS was able to be named sort of #1. And I think that just goes to show that they truly have been able to kind of have that global impact. We could always, of course, look at their 26 Guinness World Records so far. But, it really has been shown that BTS has been able to break through their music, connect with their music. And that's why we've also seen them be the first South Korean group to be nominated and perform on prestigious stages like the Grammy Awards, or, even show up with a cameo at the Academy Awards. So different things like this, where you're kind of seeing not only fans, but also the industry itself recognize BTS in this way for not only their social impact, but also their music, I think really goes to show sort of that global impact that BTS really has been able to have as musicians in particular.
Right, and speaking about the social impact, Tamar, beyond music, of course, BTS, it was the first K-pop act to address the United Nations back in the year 2018. And like President Yoon Suk-yeol mentioned earlier this year, BTS beat him to the White House last year. What were the occasions behind these invitations, and what do you suppose, Tamar, were their broader implications?
BTS went to the White House following the increase of Asian hate crimes in the U.S. And they came during a time when tension was obviously really high. You know, there is rising race tensions in the U.S. And they came to give a speech of hope, essentially, and a speech of sharing their own perspective. They shared on several occasions that they've felt racism, they faced racism. They're quite vocal about that in their own way, and it was a very powerful speech. There was a very good reaction from obviously fans, but also from media. There was, of course, some little consternation that, you know, an Asian act rather than an Asian American individual was maybe doing this speech, but I think it was kind of showing the power of BTS, you know, that they really do reflect a whole nation. Like, even though it is a country's individual issue and circumstance, obviously the whole world faces similar issues. So having them kind of represent a generation at large, both at the UN and then also at the White House, I think really shows just how impactful they are and how many people in many different walks of life recognize their impact.
Right, and Jeff, staying with that, BTS, like you mentioned earlier, has incorporated social commentary in its music and promoted, of course, issues of universal interest, as Tamar pointed out. What have been the implications of these initiatives for the group itself and possibly for K-pop as a music genre?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think we've been able to see, you know, not just BTS, but, you know, so many people's eyes being opened to different kinds of music, and also, you know, create a more understanding and empathetic world in that way too. You know, of course, BTS's lyrics speak to those social values and wanting to improve the world and make it better. And I do believe that the fans themselves take those messages to heart and have been proven to, you know, make the world better in different ways, you know, whether that's been through trying to help with climate change or even getting politically involved and, you know, seeing the different ways that K-pop fans have been able to get politically involved as a result of kind of the eye-opening measures that a group like BTS has been able to do, and getting people to understand that, you know, there's music beyond maybe in your own country's borders, or just what we tend to hear on the radio or what's being, you know, promoted and advertised to us. There's so much, I think, a larger implication that the fact that the world hasn't had an Asian pop star in this way be able to make the impact and have the visibility that someone like BTS has had, and be able to kind of make those changes in those larger ways. I think it's so special. And I feel like, even personally, I've seen it even in, you know, my dad, you know, the fact that I was able to explain different, you know, K-pop songs, or specifically BTS songs, to him using their metaphors, using the lyrics and sort of the imagery that they use, so that it's not necessarily about the language or about, you know, where the music is coming from, but rather these universal themes, these topics, just all the ways that we do connect as people in general. And the fact that I was kind of able to open up my dad's eyes to some of the topics that even BTS themselves are talking about, I thought really does speak to those universal points you mentioned that kind of can gain interest and can kind of connect with audiences no matter what age, what race, no matter where you are in the world. I think that's kind of something super special about BTS, and it's been an important point, I think, as the world has kind of become a bit more chaotic and a bit more difficult to navigate. Luckily, BTS has sort of been there to kind of keep guiding and be this positive force in that way.
Right, a good point. Tamar, in light of BTS's 10th anniversary this month, the Forbes article is calling on artists in general to embrace the concept of commemorating anniversaries in music, claiming it has significant merits. That being said, do you believe, Tamar, the musicians and fans alike have much to gain by celebrating certain dates and feats and so forth?
Yeah, and I think BTS, you know, proves this, because since very early on, every year they were celebrating their anniversary. It's a festa. It's a big event. They do different releases. They share new music or new performances, or they release, you know, fun videos or some behind the scenes. I just saw that they literally released on their Weverse magazine, you know, an old school like PC window where you could play like Minesweeper and look through old file folders for old pictures of BTS and read some articles and different essays about them. And I thought that was just so cute and engaging. And they're doing a bunch of activations in Seoul itself. Seoul is kind kind of the heart of everything. Because BTS, some of the members are currently enlisted, even though it is the 10th anniversary, there was kind of an awareness last year during their ninth festa that was kind of gonna not be the stand-in because they're doing a lot of stuff, but kind of be the precursor to this one. And so this year they have a lot of prepared videos. So there's recently, you know, they dropped a video of the Suga Sutrita show with Jin. J-Hope, even though he's also enlisted, just released a remix of one of his songs, Arson. Jimin released a version of one of his songs. There's a few videos that are teasing where they're going to be performing together. There's a bunch of live events you can go and hopefully get to see and talk to RM during a radio show on June 17th, which is going to be the final day of Festa celebrations in Seoul. And there'll be fireworks with Jungkook narrating, and it's just a big, giant event. And this, even though it feels, you know, obviously it's a 10th anniversary, so it's a big deal, but they've been kind of setting the groundwork every year by celebrating it on their own terms. They are celebrating each and every year that comes their way. They're celebrating every feat. They celebrate it with the fans. You know, every time they win a big award or finish an award show, they go straight onto a live stream and chat with the fans and share their insight and share their feelings. So there's a lot of this connectivity that I think is really important to these anniversary celebrations. And I think a lot of artists could definitely learn from this.
Right, and staying with the music, Jeff, in commemoration of this anniversary, BTS has unveiled, I understand, a new single in light of its 10th birthday, of course. Could you tell us a bit about the single and the response thus far?
Yes, for sure. BTS, of course, on Friday released their new digital single, Take Two, which was certainly a treat and something that, you know, shows the promise that BTS made from the get-go. You know, I think when that news came, that did shake up the world. That did shake up the world about the breaks that they were going to take in their chapter 2 to focus on solo music while balancing the group activities. A lot of people were unsure what this news meant. Were they, you know, going to go on hiatus? Was it going to mean no BTS music for the next, you know, 2-3 years, whatever it might be? And they promised that they were going to continue, you know, to keep on the group activities with their solo careers. And this is them once again keeping their promise by delivering a new song that they prepared ahead of the members' different military enlistments. And, you know, this song in particular is getting an amazing response. I remember when I heard the song first and told the label representative who played it for me, I said, oh, it's so good to hear them together again. And I didn't realize, I think, how much I was missing it. And I'm sure the fans kind of have realized that themselves, because this song itself, it went to #1 globally of all streaming songs. It was the top song on the global charts. It topped the iTunes charts in 92 countries after its release. It topped big charts in Japan, you know, the US, wherever it might be. So I think you're going to see a really great chart response to this song. But I think even more importantly than that, this song itself represents something really special for BTS. It's about, once again, their story, Take Two, being able to say this is the next chapter, the next story together. And it's also a love letter to the Army and to the fans that have been with them, and saying that they're, you know, ready to continue this story together. There's nothing about, you know, that it's the end, or that, you know, everything's ending, or anything like that. You know, there's a lot of beautiful messages about being so grateful, happy to be with their fans, you know, wanting to continue in the future. And this is a message that BTS has been really consistent with since last year, since they began sort of, you know, beginning this transition of moving into their chapter 2, as they call it, where they talk about how, you know, they are excited about the future, even though it's going to look a little bit different, and that they truly believe that the best is yet to come. So I think this song's having a great response, and, you know, I think it just goes to show that the world was kind of really missing these guys, and we're really happy to have them back, even if it's not the, you know, big pop banger we could have had from them. They brought it a really sentimental and important story to their career and for themselves. So I thought it was the perfect single to release right now.
Right. And Tamar, are there any other activities that have been planned for BTS fans, the army, with regard to BTS's 10th anniversary this year that you would like to highlight? Apart from, of course, RM's planned interaction with his fans later this week in Yeouido.
Yes. I think that's definitely the most exciting one because that doesn't happen all that often. I think that the thing that was really exciting for me today was RM released BTS, all the members, because it's the anniversary date. They released different, most of them, I think. I haven't seen all of them yet, but I probably missed that while I was preparing for this. They released their own images on Instagram, some messages, and RM, he declared in his letter, it was so poignant that it's so special. I'm going to misquote him, and excuse me, please, anyone watching, go look up his letter. It's a beautiful letter. How special it is for a noun to become a pronoun. And it's such a poignant moment because, you know, BTS presents everywhere. BTS are everywhere. They're doing all these events, mostly in Seoul, but there's also in other cities, there's smaller events, or fans are doing their own events. And online fans have been, I saw one thread of fans sharing the pictures of the 7 members together when they first got into the band. And I thought, wow, this is like such an amazing, each person has their own moment when they remember when they first met BTS. And I just think that was such a beautiful thing. So even though a lot of it, unless you're in Seoul, there's not quite as much as maybe we would like. But there's a lot of fun stuff going on. My personal favorite, which is kind of nerdy, is that in South Korea, they released stamps commemorating this. And I think that's just kind of fun and wild because usually, you know, stamps commemorate something really important because it's a country-wide mailing, you know, payment system. It's a currency almost, and it's really recognizing BTS's impact just in general, but especially for the country itself. And they've spoken so much about how special it is to represent South Korea to the world, how their connection to Korea, they have a lot of early songs that relate to their Koreanness and their regional, you know, their differences and all their accents and their family's culture and stuff. So I think it's really important and just kind of a nice, even though it is kind of, you know, an interesting anniversary because, as we mentioned, not all the members are going to be there live, but they've prepared so much it almost doesn't feel that way, but it still feels like a really great connection and they really got everything that they wanted to share with us out throughout everything that they're doing.
Right, definitely. Jeff, I understand this next question may be quite tough because you're not a fortune teller, but what do you envision for BTS when all the members do return as a team after their military service, speaking very briefly?
Oh yeah, you know, it is tough to say, but I think something we can always count on with BTS is that they're always going to speak to where the world is at. On one hand, we know they're going to bring great music, great vocals, great performances, but I think we'll have to see where the world is at that point to know kind of where BTS is. I think they'll be able to read the situation, read the temperature of where the world is, read what their fans are talking about, and kind of be able to bring it there. They've kept their promise so far to stay together and balance their careers as a group and soloists. And I think we'll have to kind of see where the world is at that point, to know exactly where BTS is going to go. But I think the one thing we can definitely say for sure is that it's going to be an emotional and a very special moment that naturally the entire world is going to be watching. And I can't wait for it personally. I think, you know, the guys, like I said, they made the promise that the best is yet to come, and I do truly believe that. So I'm excited to see where BTS comes whenever we do get to finally have them all back together once again as 7.
Right, and I'm sure Army joins your thoughts as well. All right, Jeff, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts. And Tamar, thank you very much for your insights today.
Thank you.
Right, well, on that note, we end this edition of Issues and Insiders. Thank you for watching. See you same time tomorrow.